Picture this: a 25-year-old Macedonian king stands before the gates of the most powerful empire the world has ever known. The Persian Empire stretched from India to Egypt, commanding millions of subjects and unlimited wealth. Yet in just over a decade, this young warrior would bring it all crashing down. I'm talking about Alexander the Great, and today, I'm going to reveal the shocking truth about how he achieved the impossible, toppling an empire that had dominated the ancient world for over 2 centuries. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about ancient warfare, political strategy, and what it truly takes to conquer the unconquerable. The Persian Empire wasn't just large, it was absolutely massive. At its peak, it covered over 5.5 million square kilometers, making it the largest empire in ancient history up to that point. From the shores of Greece to the Indus Valley, from the Black Sea to the Arabian Desert, Persian rule seemed eternal. For over 200 years, Persian kings had commanded respect and fear across 3 continents. They controlled the world's major trade routes, possessed virtually unlimited resources, and commanded armies that dwarfed anything Europe could muster. The Persians had defeated the Greeks before, burned Athens to the ground, and seemed utterly invincible. But here's what most people don't understand about Alexander's conquest. It wasn't just about military genius, though that played a huge part. It was about exploiting a fundamental weakness that had been growing within the Persian Empire for decades. The Persian Empire, despite its size and wealth, had become complacent. The very vastness that made it powerful also made it vulnerable. Communication across such enormous distances took months. Local governors, called satraps, had begun acting like independent rulers. The empire was held together more by tradition and fear than by genuine loyalty. When Alexander crossed into Asia Minor in 334 BC, he wasn't facing a unified, determined enemy. He was confronting a giant with feet of clay, but he still had to prove it could be toppled. Alexander's first major test came at the Battle of Granicus River. Here's something that will blow your mind. Alexander didn't just win this battle. He led from the front, personally charging into the enemy lines. This wasn't some general sitting safely in the rear. This was a king who fought alongside his men, sharing their dangers. The psychological impact was enormous. Persian forces weren't used to facing commanders who risked everything. In Persian culture, the king was almost godlike, too precious to risk in battle. But here was Alexander, sword in hand, proving that he was willing to die for victory. But the real shock came at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC. This is where the story takes an absolutely incredible turn. Darius III, the Persian king himself, decided to face Alexander personally. Picture the scene: the ruler of the world's greatest empire, commanding a massive army, facing this young upstart from Macedonia. The armies met in a narrow coastal plain that actually favored Alexander's smaller but more disciplined force. Here's the part that still gives me chills. When the battle reached its climax, Alexander spotted Darius in his war chariot and made a direct charge straight at the Persian king. Can you imagine the audacity? A 24-year-old king charging directly at the most powerful ruler in the world. But that's exactly what happened. And when Darius saw Alexander cutting through his elite guards like a force of nature, something unprecedented occurred. The Persian king fled the battlefield. Think about this for a moment. The king of kings, ruler of millions, abandoned his own army and ran. His mother, wife, and children were captured. The psychological blow was devastating. If their god-king could flee, what did that say about Persian invincibility? But Alexander's masterpiece was yet to come. At Gaugamela, in 331 BC, Darius made his final stand. The Persian king assembled what may have been the largest army in ancient history. Modern estimates suggest he had over 250,000 troops, including war elephants, scythe chariots, and elite units from across the empire. Alexander's force, maybe 47,000 men. The odds were impossible. Any rational commander would have retreated, negotiated, or found another way. But Alexander saw opportunity where others saw certain death. Here's what happened that completely changed the course of human history. Alexander didn't just try to match Persian numbers, he used their size against them. The massive Persian army was unwieldy, difficult to coordinate, and vulnerable to rapid, decisive strikes. Alexander positioned his forces in an oblique formation, concentrating his best troops on one wing while refusing the other. When battle began, he personally led his elite companion cavalry in a wedge formation straight at the point where he calculated Darius would be positioned. The charge was devastating. Alexander's cavalry smashed through the Persian lines like a thunderbolt. Once again, when Darius saw Alexander bearing down on him personally, the Persian king fled. His army, seeing their king retreat, dissolved into chaos. But here's what most people miss about this victory. It wasn't just about the battle itself. Alexander had spent years studying Persian weaknesses, understanding their political structure, and preparing for exactly this moment. He knew that defeating Darius personally would collapse the entire imperial system, and that's exactly what happened. With Darius dead shortly after, killed by his own nobles, the Persian Empire simply ceased to exist as a unified entity. Provincial governors surrendered or switched sides. Ancient cities opened their gates. The greatest empire in human history collapsed like a house of cards. What can we learn from this incredible story? First, that size and resources mean nothing without unity of purpose. The Persian Empire looked invincible from the outside, but internal divisions made it vulnerable to someone who understood how to exploit them. Second, leadership matters more than numbers. Alexander's willingness to share risks with his men, to lead from the front, created a loyalty and fighting spirit that no amount of gold could buy. Third, sometimes the most audacious strategy is the most effective one. Everyone expected Alexander to be cautious, to avoid direct confrontation with superior forces. By doing exactly the opposite, he achieved results that seemed impossible. Think about your own challenges. How often do we assume something is impossible because it looks too big, too established, too powerful to change? Alexander's story shows us that even the most entrenched systems have weaknesses that can be exploited by someone brave enough to act decisively. The fall of the Persian Empire wasn't just a military conquest. It was a complete transformation of the ancient world. Alexander didn't just defeat his enemies, he adopted and adapted their best practices, creating a new form of empire that blended Greek and Persian elements. This is why his victory was so stunning and so enduring. He didn't just destroy the old order. He created a new one that would influence civilization for centuries to come. The Hellenistic world that emerged from Alexander's conquests shaped art, philosophy, science, and culture across 3 continents. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Alexander's achievement is how he maintained momentum. After defeating the Persians, he could have stopped, enjoyed his victory, ruled his conquered territories. Instead, he pushed further east, into India, always seeking new challenges, new worlds to conquer. This relentless drive, this refusal to accept limitations, is what separated Alexander from every other conqueror in history. He didn't just want to be the greatest king in the known world, he wanted to expand what that world could be. The Persian Empire had seemed eternal, inevitable, unchangeable. In just over a decade, Alexander proved that nothing is permanent, that even the mightiest structures can fall to someone with enough vision, courage, and determination to challenge them. What's your Persian Empire? What seemingly impossible challenge are you facing that everyone tells you can't be overcome? Alexander's story reminds us that the greatest victories often come from taking on the challenges that others consider hopeless. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I've got so many more incredible historical stories that will completely change how you see the world. Trust me, once you start discovering these hidden truths about history, you'll never look at the present the same way again. What do you think about Alexander's strategy? Could someone today use similar tactics to overcome seemingly impossible odds? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your insights often inspire my next videos. Remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding the patterns that still shape our world today. Subscribe now, and let's explore these incredible stories together. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video. Bye.